Economists use the terms demand and supply every day. But what do we mean by those two widely used concepts? Here is a model that can explain how much is optimal for consumers to demand a certain good X in response to changes in the factors affecting their behavior. One of the factors affecting how much a consumer will end up buying is, understandably, the own price of the good X. We typically say that there is an inverse relationship between the price the consumer is asked to pay and how much they end up paying. Why is such an inverse relationship in place? Well, behind every unit we demand, there is certain willingness to pay, right? The willingness to pay varies with how much you already have of the good. If you have very little of the good and have some money to spare, you'll be willing to give up a lot of money to get to that first unit of the good. But if you already have a lot of that good you desire, then your willingness to pay starts declining. As that willingness to pay declines, the seller of the good needs to lower that price to convince you to buy the additional unit of the good. So ultimately, behind every demand, there is a certain willingness to pay. This willingness to pay reflects the declining marginal utility of the good along your levels of consumption. The more you have, the less you're ready to pay to get the additional unit of the good. Now, at some point, the seller might need to give out the good for free to make you consume the additional unit of the good. But notice that the own price of the good is just one of the many factors affecting your willingness to pay. Many other factors can affect this. For example, your expectation about the price of this good tomorrow may drive your willingness to pay for the good today, irrespective of the price of the good today. Let's say you're considering moving out from your parents' home and start renting with your partner. When will you move? If you expect rental prices to go up in a few months, then for the same good you will be paying more money tomorrow. So you better lock yourself in a better deal today. Right, so your expectation about a higher price tomorrow drives your willingness to pay up, even today. But say you're already on the housing ladder. You have an apartment and you're considering selling it and buying a house for yourself and your family. When is it more likely that you and your family think about moving out? Of course, it's more likely that your willingness to pay for a house increases even today if you expect those prices to go up tomorrow. And vice versa, if you expect the market to go south from here, you better postpone the purchase decision until tomorrow. Because tomorrow you'll be able to buy the same house for less money. My whole point is that expectations about prices of the same good can drive your willingness to pay for any price today. And with your willingness to pay, your demand goes up or down. Additional factors determine your willingness to pay and your demand at each price as well. Now, for example, the prices of substitutes and complements. Substitutes are goods or services you use instead of your original good. So, for example, instead of Facebook messaging, you use WhatsApp. Or instead of messaging on MS Teams, you use email. Or instead of Amazon Prime Video, you use Netflix. At the same time, complements are goods or services that you use together with other goods or services. So, for example, you use your smartphone together with your data plan from a telecom. Or you use your laptop together with internet connection. Or you use a flight together with a meal on the flight. So PS is the price of substitutes and PC is the price of complements. Now, when the price of a substitute goes up, you would rather not pay as much for it as you did so far, right? But at the same time, as your original good can do a similar service to you, your willingness to pay for the original good X increases. And therefore, your demand for the original good will increase. So a price of a substitute is positively correlated with your willingness to pay for the original good. And therefore, we start demanding more of the original good at each price. When the price of a complement, however, goes up, then we'll be buying less of the complement. But because the complement goes hand in hand with our original good, we're also less willing to spend on our original good, as this is happening at each price level of our original good. So, a price of a complement good is in a negative correlation with the demand for our original good. But notice that our discussion so far has focused on price factors only. The price of the original good, the expectation about its price tomorrow, and then prices of related goods. But we're missing a crucial factor for how much we're willing to pay for goods and services. This crucial factor is how much money we have to spend this month to begin with. It is our income, and we denote it with Y. Typically, income increases our willingness to spend for most goods and services. The more income we have, the more we're willing to spend. So, with more income, our demand will also increase. And this will happen at each market price for the good. No matter what the initial price was, with a higher income, we are eager to spend more. However, this is not valid for all goods and services. When our income goes up, we're more likely to spend more on goods and services which we have so far and which we couldn't afford, which we so far couldn't afford. As our demand for those goods and services goes up, we reduce our demand for the goods and services which do similar jobs, but were affordable so far. So for example, when your income goes up, you move away from sharing a flat with someone and start renting yourself. Until now, renting was unaffordable, but with the increase in income, it is affordable. As a result, we reduce our demand for shared accommodation and increase our demand for independent renting. So, where our income goes up, we tend to increase our demand for certain goods we call normal goods. At the same time, we tend to reduce our demand for goods and services which are still okay, but which we would strictly avoid if our income increases. It is those goods we call inferior, like shared accommodation, for example. As important as it is, income cannot explain all the changes in our willingness to pay for goods and services. Sometimes preferences are key. This little sign here denotes preferences. For example, if you're a Chelsea fan, you would never, ever consider buying an Arsenal scarf for yourself, no matter what the price is, no matter what your income is, and no matter what the price of Tottenham scarves is meanwhile. You would buy a Chelsea scarf no matter what, and vice versa. This is why preferences are key to understand consumer demand, and marketing departments and major brands focus so much on their attention to affecting consumer preferences. Of course, there are numerous other factors affecting our willingness to pay, such as peer effects, the weather, parents' preferences, but most, if not all, work their way on your demand through some of the factors we already discussed above. So, to summarize, we have an inverse relationship between the own price of the good and the optimal quantity demanded for that good. Every point on this demand curve is an optimal point for the consumer, indicating how much they're willing to pay for each price they can possibly face in the market. But note that the consumer optimization process may be affected by numerous other factors such as expectations, prices of related goods, income, and preferences. Each of those factors affects the willingness to pay of our consumer at each price, and therefore affects the optimal quantity they'll be willing to buy. That's why we hold everything else fixed when we move up and down the demand curve, but change the price of the good itself. And whenever any other factor but the own price of the good changes, we're changing the optimal quantity we're willing to buy at each price. And as a result, we move the entire demand curve accordingly. We can discuss similar factors affecting supply. Of course, the main factor affecting how much will be supplied of a certain good is the price of the good itself, but other factors will affect the marginal costs of the firm, and its isoprofit lines at each price, and will therefore affect the optimal quantity at each price for the firm which produces the good X. For example, if the firm expects the price of this good to go up tomorrow, it will lower its supply today because it can sell it at a higher price tomorrow. For example, some houses will disappear from the housing market today in expectation of a higher price tomorrow. On the other hand, if you expect the house prices to go down tomorrow, you better sell today. The prices of inputs, PI, are an additional factor affecting how much the firm will be able to supply. If it becomes more expensive to produce, the marginal cost curve moves up and to the left. This shrinks the optimal quantity the firm produces at each price. And as a result, with the prices of inputs going up, the firm will reduce its profit maximizing supply. Technological improvements, on the other hand, which we denote with T, work in the opposite direction. Firms adopt new technologies to make workers more productive. In turn, this lowers marginal costs and increases optimal supply at each price. A very interesting factor affecting supply today is the opportunities to earn profits elsewhere. When Facebook realized in 2011 that its growth is not unlimited, it bought Instagram to monetize on alternative profitable opportunities. Earlier, around 2004, Nokia was the leading mobile telephone company in the world. Every single one of your parents owned a Nokia at some point, before the smartphone era. However, Nokia missed the trend to lower its supply of dumb phones and shift resources to the smartphones market, and as a result, it nearly died a few years ago. All I'm saying is that the price does affect how much it's optimal for us to supply. But there are other factors driving how much it is optimal to supply at each market price. When we move the price of the good itself, then the firm changes its optimal quantity produced along a single supply curve. However, when other factors change, they affect the marginal cost curve from which the optimal supply is derived for each price. And that's why we move the entire supply curve when the additional factors discussed above change. In the next video, we'll combine the intuition discussed here and we'll arrive at one of the key concepts in our profession, the concepts of equilibrium in a certain market.